One thing I wanted to recheck here is how much memory we're using at this point. So if I go back into Redis and type in the info command, I'll head up here to memory and we'll see that we're using more than before, right? About 2.5 to maybe 4, depending on the RSS count versus used memory. We see we have 3.8 gigabytes in my Docker container here, so that's good. But we are using in the megabytes already, while before it was less than a megabyte. So we are sort of saving a bunch of stuff here. So there are ways to reduce your memory footprint. Now let's test this out here. What I want to test out is in the domains query, instead of returning a collection object and having that collection object be full of database rows that return a bunch of data, I want to try to return just a simple array here. And doing that will allow us to save less data into Redis, right? So instead of a serialized collection object and that collection object having a bunch of database objects that are returned, or even models, I guess in this case, page view models, we can reduce the amount of stuff we are saving to cache by just returning an array. The first thing we want to do is just return an array instead of all these objects. So we don't actually want caching to be happening here, right? We want to take caching out of the equation so it's not getting in our way, so we know we're actually getting results from the database instead of from cache. So our app service provider has made this easy for us because we can just return a new page views object, and then we don't have to worry about it returning the cache object, right? So just like that, I've turned off caching for my application completely. So I can go back to the browser, refresh this. We'll see we have our 4 queries back because it's not grabbing from cache anymore. Okay, so let's just test this out. I'm going to dump and die here. And that is giving us a collection. That collection has an array, and each array item is a page views model with a bunch of data in it. So let's say to array, refresh this, and now we have an array of arrays, and each array item just has a domain object in it. Okay, we're getting a little better here. Let's actually pluck domain and then send that to an array and refresh this. And now we get the littlest data possible, which is just a single array, not an array of arrays. And each item is just a unique domain used. So we have gone from having a collection full of model objects, to an array that had an array of arrays, and each single array had a domain in it, down to just a single array, a single dimensional array, and that one dimension has just the domains there. So now I think we'll break this a little bit still. Yep. We need to make sure that the view expects just that array object. So we can go to resources, views, and I think it's just home view. Yep, so we have domains down here. So even here, I actually plucked domain, but instead I can just do for each domains this domain, and that should work now. Great, perfect. So we have a unique listing of domains there, and we have less data that we potentially could put into cache. Okay, now app service provider, let's get our caching back. We just re-enabled it just by deleting that line because page view cache, that decorator, is now in use. We'll refresh it. Now, I haven't actually gotten that data out of cache because it's still there because it hasn't been 60 minutes since I made that last video. So I'm going to go back here. We'll exit. Actually, from here we can do the command flush all. That'll get rid of all of the data there. Let's head back here, and that has our session stored, so we actually need to log back in. And we'll see now that our queries are back here. It ran the queries because they weren't in cache anymore. If I refresh this, they are in cache. And we're getting no database queries because the results are back from cache. And of course, most importantly, we have our same list of unique domains here. So now we've simply returned an array of domains instead of this larger object that has a serialized collection, and within that a serialized version of each model that we got back from the database. So we're saving less data into Redis. My data is so small, I don't think that's even a particularly large number of data savings here. Some human memory usage is under a megabyte again. But of course, I could build that back up just by doing other page views with different filters and all of that. But in either way, we're saving less to Redis. So I encourage you to do tricks like this whenever you can to save as little to your cache as possible. So we've reduced the memory footprint of Redis a little bit just by only saving the specific data we need to within our cache. There are some other tricks you could do. Potentially you can just save the IDs of some results, but because I'm doing a distinct domain and up here I'm doing a count, that doesn't really make sense for our case. But you can, if you can imagine, returning just the IDs and saving the IDs of the result inside of your cache, and then just returning that. So that would look something like pluck ID and even maybe to array. So we just save an array instead of a collection item again. And then we're just getting a set of IDs into Redis. And then if we ever wanted to get that back, we would do something like IDs equal here, and then page view where in ID, IDs, get, returning something like that. That won't work in this case because we're getting counts instead of just specific page views. But if you can imagine a situation where you're just getting like a set of blogs or maybe a product based off of certain filters where you just need the end set of product IDs, this kind of solution could work for you there. So you're just saving IDs in cache instead of this collection object and all of the data related to each item in that collection as well.